Welcome to Productive Joy with Dr. Christie, where fun meets action.
Hello and welcome to Productive Joy, the brain child podcast of a wonderfully energetic and authentically true to herself, Dr. Christie McMullen. Hello, Dr. Christie. Welcome to your podcast.
Oh my gosh, this is so much fun. Hi, Jonathan. Thanks for having me.
Well, I appreciate you having me. We're going to flip the script today because this is your 30th episode. And congratulations to you. That's super exciting, right? And after having so many wonderful guests sharing a wealth of knowledge, and I thought, or you and I thought rather, that it would be a good opportunity to reflect and connect on your journey as a podcaster, your guests and the insights that they shared, and then also give us an opportunity to look at the tools that they gave us as a way for your listeners to continue to practice, participate, and be a part of Productive Joy.
Yeah, it was a genius idea, your genius idea, as we were talking about where we were headed with this podcast. And I am just so excited to have the opportunity to recap a little bit, but to do so in a flip script way. I think this is going to be fun.
Yeah. I've been a fan since episode 1, and it's really cool to be in this kind of role because I think there's a lot of people, or rather myself, as a listener, is curious what's behind the scenes. How is it working? How is it happening? How is it unfolding? While I'm also an active engager of the guests and the stories that you share. So it's super exciting. But right from the jump, we know that there's a short window. That's something you always tell us in your podcast. There's a short window that capture people's attention. So why should your audience listen to this particular episode? And what do you anticipate them getting from it?
So here's the thing. I've been doing this now for a whopping 2.5 months. I've learned something. But I've also really had some amazing guests. And today is going to be an opportunity for you to hear a little nugget from each of them, or from a lot of them. I don't know that I'll get to all of them. And kind of put a bow on it so that people would know if they've never listened before, they'd know why they might want to. Or if they've been listening, they would know why they should continue to listen. So it's kind of a peek behind the curtain, which we all love, right? We all love the backstage pass. So this is like the backstage pass for Productive Joy.
And if they happen upon this particular episode, they'll get an opportunity to go, oh, that one sounds cool, or oh, that one sounds cool, and jump to a place to start if they're new, or a place to re-engage if they hadn't heard some that passed. But you got a rock star series of guests. I'm curious to discover if you could take us through a few highlights or impactful moments that you've had so far.
Sure. Well, let's start with episode 1. You said you've been a listener since episode 1 because you were episode 1. So for those of you that are new to this process, you've heard Jonathan's voice at the beginning of every episode. This man right here has a voice for all things radio and TV, and he's just got that booming voice. So I asked him when I very first started if he wanted to be the voice of Productive Joy, and I'm so glad I did. But if you didn't have a chance to listen to that first episode, start there because he does drop some beautiful nuggets of wisdom. And one of the coolest things that he does is he walks us through a process that he uses with leaders all the time. And Jonathan, I'm going to let you tell us about your 3-2-1 that I think is so powerful.
Well, Christy, what's powerful about that particular strategy is there's as educators, you and I both know that there are 3 phases to learning, right? There's the capturing of the information, the storing of the information, and one that a lot of forget to activate, which is the retrieving of that information. Right. And the 3-2-1 is a really cool strategy that will help anyone, whether they're a student, an educator, an entrepreneur, a leader, reflect on their learning process because learning really happens in the reflection. So we ask them to think about their 3 high fives, their 2 whispers, and their 1 future, which gives you an opportunity to practice thinking through your experience. What went good, what went bad, who did you help and how? And that solidifies in your brain. It sparks enough synaptic sparks to say, this is information you should know. And so as you do that over a long period of time, that reflective process, your brain now knows, hey, this bucket of information is important. So I'm going to save it. I'm not going to delete it.
Yeah. Which, we have to decide what we're going to save and what we're going to delete in our brains all the time. And you did such a great job of walking us through not just that, but telling us your story. And I think that's the thing that I've enjoyed the most about every episode is that people gave a synopsis of their story, and they took that and they took the Productive Joy spin on it. So I have had a variety of guests. I started out with a publisher who actually lost her hearing And after losing her hearing, she found her passion, which is a pretty cool story, right? So that's Jodie Costa, if you want to listen. And then we had somebody who started their business literally in a garage and has turned it into a multi-million-dollar, really successful appraisal company. That's Joni Pilgrim. And then I had Dr. Merv Jenkins, who's a rapper and all around amazing dude who founded Place. And I think what was cool to me about Merv is that he helped us recognize that sometimes we're in the wrong seat on the bus. It doesn't mean that we're wrong. It means that our talents aren't being leveraged in the space we're in, which is what Tom Goodwitch talked to us about too, was leveraging your talents into a career. How cool is that? Figuring out what you want to be when you grow up and how to actually do it versus just thinking about it, which Jonathan, I know you are doing right now with JGB Speaks and going out on your own and figuring out who you want to be when you grow up.
Absolutely.
The first few. So I had so many. I want to talk about all of them, but I don't know if I should talk about all of them in a row or if you have questions.
Well, I do have some questions that I want to think about because I had an opportunity to kind of go through, and like I said, as a listener, you have some golden nuggets of quotes and insights and understanding. But I'm curious as to the mega list of guests you have on here. What sparked it for you? What told Dr. Christie this productive joy as a podcast is something that I need to unleash? I don't know how it's going to be unleashed. I don't know when it's going, but I need to unleash. Take us to that moment and then walk us through that.
So I think it would go back to 2020. I became an avid podcast listener during the pandemic. As a matter of fact, Brene Brown and I became besties during that time. That's when she launched her podcast. And I remember where I was sitting in my family room when I listened to her very first episode that she recorded in a closet. And I remember thinking, this is a cool concept. And the more I listened to her and others, there's a podcast called That Sounds Fun, which was one that I just gravitated towards. And I think because fun is a really important thing to me. And as I kept listening to these podcasts, I thought, I could do that. Like, I love to talk to people, but I also love to be a sense maker and to take all of these great ideas and turn them into a couple nuggets that people can walk away with. It's kind of my superpower, right? That and remembering names, which is a really bizarre one that I can do in a room of 150 people. Fun fact, I can remember about 150 names in an hour.
Wow.
Yeah, random, but it is a party trick.
You're gonna have to give us that strategy in a little bit on how to.
I will.
To do that.
Well, but it is that is one superpower. But my other superpower really is spinning a story into something that people can remember. And so as I'm listening to all these podcasts, I'm learning, right? And I'm thinking, okay, I really think that at some point I would like to do this. Well, life happens and you go, okay, but I don't have enough to say, or there are already a whole lot of people out there, or, what could I possibly bring to the table that isn't already there? And then, nobody's ever been me before. Like, I get to be me. And I get to bring what I know and my superpowers to the table, but I get to do that by showcasing some of the really cool humans that I know. And so that's where Productive Joy came from. My second book is called Make Work Fun So People Don't Quit. And my original thoughts on, what would I name a podcast were things like Make Work Fun. And then I realized it's not just about work, right? It's about life and how can you make life fun? And then I thought, well, nobody's going to want to listen to that. And then I just started playing with ChatGPT. And I was like, okay, what are all the different ways that you can make work fun? And it came up with Productive Joy. And I thought, oh gosh, that's it. That's what I want to bring to the table, is for people to say, all right, fun and productivity are often seen as separate. And, oh, that was really fun. Now we have to go to work. And I don't think that's true. I think you can do both at the same time. So I think my number one goal with the podcast is to let people know that those can happen synonymously.
To simply convince people that, they can happen synonymously. I love that. So what I heard you say, and something I wanted to kind of bring us back to is you acknowledge or you recognize an opportunity that interests you, but you also at the same time attached it to a superpower, something you were good at doing. You're like, I like this and I have these series of superpowers. that could help me do this well. And when we go back to the reflective exercise that we talked about in the very beginning, which is one of my favorite strategies, the reason we reflect on our high five, because those are the things we do well, which are going to help influence who we're going to become in the future. So if we spend time reflecting on what I do well, we're going to be better equipped to exercise those superpowers when we see an opportunity that we want to activate. The other thing I heard you say was that you then started to think through, how might I pull these ideas and what I want to accomplish together? And as you were interviewing your guest, you always walked us to an opportunity to hear what they were saying and then conceptualize it in a nice little chunk. And for me, as a huge note taker, because I'm constantly scribbling notes, it was something I grew up in with school, was learning how to intentionally take notes. And we can talk about Ebbinghaus and the curve of forgetting and why introducing your notes to yourself will help bring your knowledge back up to the top. But you do that for us as we go through that experience as well. So not only are we hearing this information and trying to absorb it, but then you bring us back to this nice summary of what was just said and how it connects to the purpose that you talked about. We heard a little bit about your why. I'm curious to discover how you built this roster, because I know a little secret. There's some big coming too, but there were some big names in the first 30 episodes, right? How did you build this roster of guests?
Oh my gosh. You know what? That was probably the most fun. So month before I actually decided to launch. I launched on February 6th. It was kind of a random, like I was going to do it at the beginning of the year, but everything happens in January. But probably September, I started writing down the names of the people that I knew that I know have a good story to tell. So like I think about my friend Kelsey. Kelsey and I run together. Well, we used to run. Now we do more walking, talking, and exercising together. But for years have been doing that. And every time I talk to her, I think she is just she knows so many things and does so many things. People need to hear that. And then I had the same thought with my friend Bertine, who absolutely brilliant and has this SWOT plan that, a SWOT is not unique to her, but how she spends it, 100% it. And I met her at a conference and thought, okay, that's the kind of person somebody would want to hear from. So how did I build my roster? I went back through not my Rolodex of humans I know, but more who has a story to tell? Whose story do I know that other people would want to hear too? And those are the people I grabbed. And I have a lot more that I'm really excited about.
Well, you dropped two. You said Kelsey and Racine. Kelsey, just for our listeners who want to kind of pick at that one a little later, that's Juggling the Madness of Life Like a Boss. I love that title, right? It's like everything that we're trying to accomplish in one little nugget of a title. And then Racine, you said, the title of that one was Knowing Your Strength and Leveraging Your Weaknesses. The two podcasts that I'll go back and listen to again after this conversation. So we talked about your why. We discovered how you built this playlist of guests. When you think about impact, when you think about what your listeners can do with this collection of resources and tools, what do you have planned for the future in relation to maybe building or putting together a storage house of resources for your followers or for your subscribers? And what would you like your impact of not just this moment of productive joy in the podcast, but productive joy as a movement?
Yeah. Oh, I like thinking of it as a movement. So you all know that if you've listened at all, that my father is an entertainer because he plays the intro and outro music. And growing up as a little girl, I wanted to be an entertainer and a teacher. I didn't know those things were actually the same because every teacher is indeed an entertainer, but I thought I wanted to be on stage in the summers and teach during the year. Well, fast forward almost, 25 years worth of my career. And what I've been doing all that time is marrying entertainment to learning something and being able to walk away with that something. So the question's, where are we headed? I want people to be not tricked, but entertained into learning something that they really, really need. And I believe that productive joy is that thing. We quit things that aren't fun. So if we if our cup is not being filled with whatever it is we're doing, we're going to move on to something else. Our brain by nature is going to say, no, I don't want to do that anymore. So my goal for productive joy in the future is that people start coming here for their shot of B12 or their opportunity to go, I can use that right away. Like that's not oh, now I have to like build a list and do a thing. No, I could do this in my car on the way to school with my kids. I can adopt that with my team immediately. I can use the thing that I just heard. Like think about Neil Pretty. Neil talked about psychological safety and being the kind of boss that people want to follow, right? And he gave us some very practical things that you can do when you're the one in charge, right? Leading in a way that people want to follow. Well, if I'm headed to work and I'm listening to Productive Joy on the way there, I can use that right away. Dustin Owen is another one. He talked about all kinds of things, and he's a great podcaster himself, but his ultimate thing is, yes, you can, right? And what's your big, hairy, audacious goal? Well, I can go and have a conversation with my husband about what I really want to do with our life and our finances and our, whatever after listening to that podcast. So what do I want Productive Joy to do? I want it to give people what they need in the moment that they can turn around and use. And I have to reference the notes real quick because that was by design. I know that people only learn things that are repeated, right? And that have some sort of stickiness. And the stickiness is usually phrasing repeated over time. And I know that most people are listening to podcasts in the car or while running or walking or exercising or whatever. And I know they don't have a pen and paper in hand. So if I can repeat what somebody says multiple times, they're more likely to remember it. And then if I ask them at the end, okay, if they can't remember anything else, what will they remember? Then people will actually be able to carry it forward. So that's where I would like to see Productive Joy go.
Yeah. So you talked about making what people do fun so they stick with it. And I got to be honest with you, I'm at a phase in my entrepreneurial journey where a lot of the stuff that I have to do is not necessarily fun, but I ran to do this. And I called you 3 or 4 times with ideas because it is fun. And when you find that slot of where you're doing the work that you really enjoy, productivity just goes through the roof, right? And so for me, it started to make sense when I found myself, still getting up and doing what I needed to do on my own end, right? Like building out the marketing materials, making connections, getting meetings canceled on me and driving back home. But then when I had an opportunity to sit and plan with you about this episode, I was like, I'm there and I'm eagerly sitting at my computer, ready to get rocking and rolling. So I think it's really cool. And I know we like to keep this to about 30 minutes of a call. And there's a few questions that I hear you regularly ask. And so I wanted to kind of flip them out on you, if you don't mind.
I don't mind.
Dr. Christie, let's start with this one. What is your definition of fun?
Fun is something that I am choosing to do that puts a genuine smile on my face. So that might come in the form of a really hard workout, as crazy as that might sound. That also absolutely comes in getting on the boat with my husband, Jason, and just cruising. I love nothing more than the wind in my hair. Sometimes my eyes are closed. Sometimes they're open. It just depends. And we're just cruising, right? So fun is something that puts the kind of smile on my face that I can't hide.
Awesome. I'm going to make this commitment right now on your podcast. When I've been to so many conferences with you and at 5 o'clock in the morning, I'm up, but I am not at that boot camp. You have a boot camp at every conference that I have ever been to. I will be at your next boot camp because it looks so much fun. Everyone that I see is in that boot camp throughout the day, have energy. They're super ready. They're built for the day. And I think that's a big part of why they're successful. So
they might be cursing me under their breath because they can't stand up because their legs hurt. But other than that, yeah.
Absolutely. But it's joyful. They keep coming back because they enjoy it, right? And I want to be a part of that community so bad.
You're always welcome, Jonathan.
Show up, right?
Always. That's it.
Rapid fire. We're going to keep this going. You talked a little bit about your definition of fun. How do you know you're showing up as your authentic self?
Because it doesn't require thought. If I have to think about who am I supposed to be right now, I'm probably not being fully me. But when I lose myself in the moment, then like right now, this is fully Christie. You are getting all of me. I am about to break out in a sweat because I'm excited. And I am showing up authentically because I don't have to hide who I am in any way in that space. That's how I know I'm being authentically me.
How do you channel your best self on your worst day? Take us to a story. Take us to a moment.
So for me, it's about choosing to see the good. So when I was in college, my parents decided to get a divorce. Now, I had never seen my parents fight, ever. As a matter of fact, they were the type, they held hands, everything looked great. What I didn't know is that that was my mother's idea of keeping the peace. And yet the day that they divorced, I found out my dad had been cheating on her for years, and it was a really messy situation that I didn't know anything about. So at 19 years old, my world kind of fell apart. Not only did my parents get divorced, but we lost our house in bankruptcy and everything in it was auctioned. So I didn't have a bed to go home to, and I'm away at college alone. And yes, I was an adult at 19. No, I was nowhere near an adult at 19.
Right.
And so I decided, and I have no idea what made me make this decision, but I decided to take a notebook. It was a Winnie the Pooh planner, and it had about 3 lines per day on it. And I forced myself to write only good things in that planner. And some days, the best thing I could come up with is that they served celery in the cafeteria. I know it's ridiculous, but it's my favorite food. It's just, don't judge me. But
Having bumps from a log was like a snack that my mom served, and I had no idea that it was a real snack.
oh
Like
no,
peanut butter and raisins on celery, bonker.
Anyway, so celery, yes. Or the cute, I didn't trip in front of that cute boy. Like my things were very minor, but that was the worst year of my life. And by the end of the year, I couldn't fit all of my good things on my 3 line. And what I realized is that I didn't shift my circumstance. I shifted the view of my circumstance. So the question is, how do you channel your best self on your worst day? You look for the good because it's there, right? Where we choose to focus is what we're going to see. It's kind of like if you say, look for yellow cars. Our family plays a game called Who Goes So. This is ridiculous too. But you find yellow cars on the highway, and the first person calls out Who Goes So. Now, it started out as juicy. Who Goes So is technically juicy in Spanish, and I'm saying technically because it's pretty much a made-up word that we've created. But my children are 23, and we still play Who Goes So. You see more yellow cars.
Yeah, got it. Hugo. Okay, we play.
Right, exactly. I told you, ish. So yellow cars are not something you notice until you're looking for them, right? And then all of a sudden, you will see them everywhere. So I started looking for good things, and that's what I started to see everywhere. And what do I do to channel my best self on my worst days is I look for the good. It's there. It sometimes is a little buried because the day's kind of crappy. However, the good is still there. So I choose to shift my focus.
Life happens beyond the 4 walls of our classroom, our work environment, our home office. Life happens, but sometimes life happens big. And being able to have, I don't know if it's discipline or just awareness of shifting your focus is what I'm understanding you saying. From yes, this is hard and life is happening, but if I just focused on the good, by the end of that journey, I'm going to have a list of a lot of good stuff, and I'm going to be able to move forward in that work. That's so cool. Thank you so much. One last thing. At the end of this conversation, the end of this podcast, what do you want people to walk away with? What is the one thing you want them to go? I'm going to put that in my pocket. I'm going to play it back later so I can remember it. I heard Jonathan repeat it towards the end, so it's solidified in my brain. What is that?
Productive joy is a choice. And I believe it's a choice worth making, because this is a space where you can gain something you didn't know you were missing by listening to how others harness their own productive joy. So what I want people to walk away with from this particular episode and every episode moving forward is that this really is your shot at B12. This is your decision that says, I actually do feel better at the end of this than I did when I started. And so for today's episode, I want you to realize there's a whole lot more awesomeness to come. And there are 29 other episodes that are already out that you could turn around and listen to that will blow your mind with the level of awesomeness that you'll find.
And one thing I want to encourage your listeners to do, something I do on a regular basis, you're diving into a podcast. If you get to a moment that sparks a conversation for you, send it to a friend and have that conversation. That is the rest of the fun about falling into productive joy and listening to this podcast, is that you get an opportunity to continue that conversation with your friends, your colleagues, your family members, or even strangers, right? You could be at the coffee shop, you could be at the grocery store and, heard this one thing from this podcast. What do you think about it? Continue the conversation. Dr. Chris, thank you so much for your time and energy. I absolutely love being around you and in your space. It is fulfilling. It is inspiring. And thank you for giving me the mic. This is one of my first times doing this, the podcast host. Super fun. And as you said, once we fell into ourselves, things started to spark and feel supernatural. So thank you for providing the space for me.
It is such an honor that you were willing to do it. And you are a natural, sir, one who I hope is going to continue on this journey in one form or another. You certainly have a seat here anytime you want. So thank you for convincing me that this was a good idea, which took about 4 seconds, maybe 5. And then for executing it so quickly and so wonderfully. Thank you, Jonathan. I appreciate you. And for all of our listeners, don't forget the most important thing that you can do is figure out a way to turn fun into action.